Hi, I'm Teresa Brett from Parenting for Social Change, and thanks for joining me in watching this video. Today what I want to talk about is internal motivation and supporting the internal motivation of the children who share our lives, and the importance of doing that as a lifelong process as parents. And I'm going to talk about this not only from my own practical experience as a parent. I want to talk about it from my understanding of the research literature, which I reviewed extensively in writing my book, Parenting for Social Change. I also want to talk about it from my 20 years of experience in working with university students, college students, and seeing the impact of internal motivation and seeing the impact of students who came with an external motivation. And when I'm talking about it, it may sound as though I'm talking about two extremes. You know, you're either internally motivated or externally motivated, and that's it. But often it occurs across a spectrum. But I think that there are many things that we can do as parents to continue to support children and being in that place of internal motivation. And when we think about motivation, if we think about the child, you know, if this is the child, and we think about the ways in which our culture and our society operate. What happens to children is they receive a lot of pressure from outside. They receive pressure to conform to the expectations of parents and adults, the expectations of society. And there's also a lot of inner power that children are born with. And as we know as parents, often these are at odds. Or we see them, I don't know that they really are at odds, but we see them as at odds and in conflict. But the reality is, if we're able to maintain this internal motivation that children are born with, they actually are served much better in their lives as a result. And that seems counterintuitive to what we learn in our culture, because so much of our culture is all about the external. It's about getting A's. It's about good attendance. It's about whatever it is we think we're supposed to do to get the approval of teachers, to get the approval of our parents. That's what we learn. And it's about getting the medal or being the winner on the team. And so there's so much in our culture that's all about this external. And yet what the research shows us is that children and adults who maintain this internal motivation, who maintain this connection to their inner voice and their inner authority, are much healthier emotionally, psychologically, and they actually perform better, even though I don't think a marker of success is necessarily that performance. But they perform better in social situations, they perform better in academic situations. And that seems counterintuitive because so much of our culture is around the external, the rewards or the punishments for our behavior. And yet it's the internal motivation which really serves us best. So what I want us to challenge us to think about is sort of setting aside our notions, our cultural biases, the things that we learned, the things that we experienced as children, to say that one of our most important roles as parents is to maintain that connection to a child's help them maintain that connection to their internal motivation, to that internal voice that they have, and that internal authority. As a university administrator, I saw students come in along this spectrum of internally motivated to external. And what I saw very consistently is that those students who had that internal motivation, who were stronger here, that were there because they had a love of learning, they had a strong internal desire to be there, did better academically and socially. If they were students who came from what some might call quote-unquote disadvantaged backgrounds, or what I would call under-resourced high schools or school systems, those students who had a stronger internal motivation were more successful than students who came from similar backgrounds who did not have that internal motivation. So you're able to overcome so many more barriers when you have a strong internal motivation, when you're clear about what your own internal values are. And those internal values, that connection to internal values, doesn't come from what we tell children. it comes from them. It comes from their life experiences. They are certainly influenced by us. We have the ability to turn them into externally motivated people. We have the ability to get them to be able to say that they believe in what we believe in, or pretend that they believe in what we believe in, so that they get our love and approval. But what we really do is we turn them into something else. People who don't know themselves. People who don't know what their purpose is. People who don't know why they go to college. People who search their whole lives trying to find the reason for their purpose, their whole purpose in life. Looking for those things outside of themselves, whether it's food or drugs or alcohol or money. None of those things in and of themselves may be bad, but when we search for those things outside of ourselves because we are externally motivated, then we lose that ability to create happiness within ourselves. And ultimately, I think what we want is for children to understand who they really are. For children to understand what makes them happy. For children to understand what their purpose is in the world. For children to be able to look at a variety of options, at a variety of choices, and be able to make decisions based on their internal values. And the research also shows us that when children act in accordance with their internal values, they are healthier and happier. We know that ourselves. We know when we're acting against our values, and we feel that, and we know that that is not good for us. So our role and our job as parents isn't to create this external pressure, which then makes children turn outside of themselves for love and approval, which then turns them into teenagers who look to their peer groups for love and approval and acceptance. Our job and our role as parents is to maintain this internal strength, that internal voice, that internal authority, so that children move out into the world from a very solid foundation, knowing who they are, knowing what's important to them, and being able to make decisions and act from that place of internal knowing and power. Thanks for joining me, and I hope this was helpful to you, and I would encourage you to visit my website, parentingforsocialchange.com. Take a look at my book. If you are interested in the research articles that I referenced, those are all available in the footnote sections of my books, and you would be able to find that there. And thanks for joining me.